All right, we might get started. Thank you everyone for your patience through today. There was a few speeches earlier in the day that went a little longer and has bumped things into the evening. So I apologise for that. But we're going to do a little Q&A here with some of the finest gentlemen in developing golf. I think that we have the record today of the perhaps most experienced panel of the day. And I was going to say we already checked stage limits for the weight, and it's all okay with just underweight. So we're clear and good on that. So I'm not going to go into the bio of everyone on this panel. There's a few reasons why. Mostly everyone knows who they are or have met with them or have done business. They've all been in the industry for over 35 years. But also, I encourage you to come and meet them for yourself if you haven't already. We have the gala dinner after this. Please come and grab them and have a talk about what you have experienced yourself in the development of golf. So the title of this is about really the next 100 golf courses. Vietnam has now got to a point where we have nearing 100 golf facilities. There's a lot of discussion at central government about creating another 100 golf courses. And what does that mean? What's worked well overseas and what has been a challenge. And what I did was I really went to my contacts list and spent a long time trying to work out who has been in Vietnam a long time, but also been around the world, looking at other locations, building golf courses, talking with governments, talking with owners. And I think no one was available, so these were the next guys that I could get on the list. That's me for tonight. Sorry, guys. Had to do it. I'm going to start right down the end and introduce Paul Stringer. It's a real treat to have Paul here. As we know, Paul is the president of Nicklaus Design. Undoubtedly works for the GOAT of golf, the greatest of all time, Jack Nicklaus. And your experience is second to none around the world and certainly made your footprint here in Vietnam. So welcome and thank you.
Thank you.
Next we have Mark Adams, Director of Faldo Design. Quite fitting that we're sitting here today at Laguna Lanco. Again, one of the best golf courses in the country. Mark was one of the first to walk the land here with Sir Nick and really able to pull this golf course out of Mother Nature. And if you haven't played the golf course, you need to, because it's one of the best. So thank you, Mark Adams, for taking the time and joining us. Tim Lobb, new to Vietnam, first time. Not first time, but we really wanted you to come. You've done a lot of work around Europe, a lot of work around the world, and we're going to ask a few questions today on what we can learn in Vietnam from your experiences around the world. So, from Lobb and Partners, Tim Lobb. Gavin Reed. Gavin's been around Vietnam for 40 or 50 years, or maybe longer. Gavin is the Vice President of Flagstick. A lot of people know Martin Moore and the fine work that he does. I don't think anyone's built more golf courses in this region than Martin. Martin had a chance to support this event, and he brought Gavin along, which is fantastic for us to tap into Gavin's knowledge of building golf courses. There's not anyone I've ever worked with that's better than Gavin of walking along a golf course and seeing the vision of the designer and executing it for the owner. So Gavin Reed. And a good mate, Brad. Okay, no. Brad Burgess, CEO and founder of Sports Turf Solutions and also Sustainable Turf Farms. Brad is, we talk about Rick being the godfather of online influencer. Brad is the godfather of turf. I'm sure every single golfer in this room has played on some of the grass that Brad has brought into Asia, cultivated and planted. So really appreciate Brad being here. He's been in Asia, Vietnam specifically for over 20 years. I think next year you celebrate 20 years of business in Vietnam, which is fantastic. So I really feel like we've been able to put a circle around golf development here from design, construction and grassing. So I want this to be very open. Throw your hands up. You know, it's the last session of the day. I know that people are tired and looking for their first beer at the gala dinner, so we'll try and get you to that. But, you know, I'm just going to lead with a few points here. Please throw your hand up. We've got the girls around the room with the microphone. Thank you. Right, Paul, I'll start with you down the end. You've been designing golf courses now for many years across more than 50 countries. Maybe just give us a little bit of your insight about your design principles and what differs to what you do to others, and what's something that you've found that you can pull out of the culture of a country and put it through the design.
Well, thank you. And I'd like to thank all of the people from Performance 54 and 54. You guys have done a great job. And my heart goes out to all the people in central Vietnam and Hue. Being a hurricane survivor myself in South Florida, I understand what they're going through. So best wishes to them. You know, we have designed over 450 golf courses. And when you're working in 50 countries, every demand, every landscape, every culture is different, very unique. I first started coming to Asia in 1998, and I can remember in Beijing, as some of you who have traveled, there were more bicycles than cars on the road. And when they got the announcement that they were getting the Olympics, all of a sudden there were cars, there were Western hotels, there were freeways, and it just took off from there. And golf had a similar path there. But back to your question and what we've seen in different areas, we try to work with whoever the owner is and what their vision is for the property. And if I can, I want to give you just one little example that's kind of an interesting story. And this was Jack Nicklaus Golf Club Korea, which ended up hosting the first ever President's Cup in 2015. But this was in the Bay of Incheon. And I went over there in 2004 to look at the site. I was doing business development for Jack, and we had a developer that had requested for him to come over and see it. But what we normally had done is I would go over to the site and look at it first and then come back and talk to Jack about it, or we'd send one of our designers. But this happened to be at the Bay of Incheon, and some of you with it that are history buffs, and if you follow golf and where it's developed, there's a lot of historical events that happen. But this is where MacArthur landed in the Korean War, and he single-handedly helped push back the North Koreans from invading Seoul. But I fast forward to the development. So I went over there, and the developer, it was a co-developer between Gale Division in New Jersey and POSCO Engineering. And the principle was to develop a golf course that could host tournaments, be the cornerstone of a residential development, and create something very unique and very special for the people in Incheon. So I got all that in advance. So I get over there, and I said to Stan Gale, who was the developer, I said, Stan, where's the property? And he said, you're looking at it. I said, Stan, this was 1,500 acres, and half of it was underwater. So I said, okay, so what's your vision? Well, I want to create a golf course where we could sell memberships, sell homes, host a tournament. I'm going to build a central park. We're going to do all these things. I said, okay. And I went over and I looked, and they had these huge barrels coming over the wall in Incheon Bay where they were dredging the bottom of the sea and filling the site. So I go back to Florida and I see Jack, and he goes, how did the visit go? And I said, Jack, it was a great visit. He said, what are they going to do? And I told him what the vision was. He said, that sounds great. And then I said at the very end, but half of it is underwater. And he looks at me, and any of you that have spent any time around Jack, he can roll those eyes and give you that look like, you know, this isn't going to happen. So what ended up happening is we created a golf course, like I said, that held the 2015 President's Cup, very successful golf course, many good tournaments, sold memberships, 250 of them at $1 million US, and it was a very successful development, and one where it happens because of somebody's vision. And I think, Ben, one of the stories that we hear all the time is, how do you execute the vision? Because all owners have a vision for their property, and sometimes they don't, and you have to create something that is going to be special for that particular owner. And if it's something that's a private course, how do you do it where the members are going to want to stay and play and it become a great opportunity to play? If it's a public course and a daily fee or a resort course, how do you make that successful? So we work with them, and I think the biggest and most probably successful golf courses and developments that we've seen have been well planned, and then you execute the plan. And that usually means hiring people or getting consultants that have been through it before, like people on the stage here today.
Thank you, Paul. That's really interesting, and it leads me to want to ask Gavin about site selection, because all of us on this stage are invited to sites, sometimes very accessible, sometimes very inaccessible. Tell us a little bit about your experience, Gavin. I assume you're seeing sites now every month for golf courses. We know that this country is absolutely blessed with wonderful coastline, jungle forests, etc. Tell us a little bit about what goes through your mind and some of the things that you have learnt, some of the things you wish you said to owners, and what makes it sustainable long term in terms of a site.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Look, firstly, I'm just honoured to be on the stage with, such legends, and, thanks for the invite. I'm feeling very appreciative of being in the room. Yeah, look, Flagstick have built over 130 golf courses in 19 countries. We've almost built a quarter of the inventory in Vietnam. We've been here on, boots on the ground for a long time. I've personally been here, 15 years in development. As a kid that liked his Tonka toys in the sandpit, that's still what I do. We take architects' visions and owners' ideas and make them come to fruition. That's kind of where we sit in the ecosystem. But particularly back to site selection, it's interesting, we've been talking about collaboration and working with government a bit today. I think Vietnam has the most amazing opportunity to create destinations in clusters on some of the best golf development sites on the planet. Now, that can't happen in silos. I think it has to happen in a collaborative effect. Great golf doesn't have to be expensive golf to build. If you find the right site, it can be, and again, we look at sustainability. I mean, something that is reasonably priced to build, that attracts, people into the game, that can become a destination, then creates all of the other ecosystems around it. So from our point of view, typically when we'll meet an owner and go to look at a site, the first questions they ask are, how long will this take to build and what will it cost? And they're very difficult questions to answer when, most owners haven't even thought about, do I actually have the water to develop this site? What does the model want to look like? Everybody we talk to seems to want to build a championship golf course that can host an event. Typically now, a live event. That's become a very common theme. But there's a lot of steps that get missed in that site selection phase. So what I would hope can happen from something like, this collaborative, chat is that the 3,500 kilometres of coastline that Vietnam has, at least half of that being incredible golf sites that actually does have access to water, that has incredible sand dunes, that can build a sustainable development. And then there's also, one of the projects I'm most proud of being involved in is my former role at BRG with Mark, we had a brownfield site, if you like, an old quarry, an old mining area that was used to create aggregate that we absolutely transformed through golf. And I think that story in this part of the world isn't exploited enough. So again, site selection's so key to, good outcomes. And they're good outcomes for communities, they're good outcomes for, tourism, they're good outcomes across the board.
Thanks, Gavin. Really good. Now, again, it's another good segue into the next step. Now we've designed it and we've found the site and we're starting to build. Brad, is grass important? Does it matter? I mean, it's all just green. Is there something there that you can kind of give us a bit of a heads up on what we need to know about grass?
It does matter, like what Gavin was saying, and some speakers before us, that grass only makes up 5% of the golf course, but it's probably the most important part, particularly in a place like Vietnam. Chemicals here are very, very tough to get. They're scrutinised, a lot of banned. So you want a turf grass that can be resistant to disease, to pests, can be dense enough to be able to hold back weed invasions and so on. I came out here in 1995 building golf courses. I was 23 years old. I didn't really know what I was doing, and fortunately worked for a company who helped educate and train me. And we imported grasses from the US. We went through all these stringent import requirements. It was tough to grow. The grasses came out and failed in this environment. Then we found local grasses growing here, and we took those grasses and converted the grasses painfully, with the frustration of the owners and the members. Closed the course down, closed holes down, changed the grasses to a more suitable grass that handled the environment, the conditions. And that was 30 years ago. We've now found newer varieties that are local to this environment. They've been crossbred in the US, and now we've brought those back here. We've done our own trials, and we've looked at which grasses are most suitable, which grasses don't suffer severely from disease, which have no insect invasions, which don't require mowing 3 or 4 times a week. Being sustainable, if you only have to mow once or twice a week instead of 3 or 4 times, then you're going to produce, and on top of that, you can produce better grass, better playing surfaces. Then that's sustainable.
Let me ask you a question following up to that, and then I'd like Tim Lobb to follow with the same answer for this question. I often have found that sometimes the decision to design the golf course and how to build it and so forth, or what companies and main contractors are brought in, sometimes these decisions are made on different pages. And what we do see certainly is the type of grass that's selected is often done, again, independently. Does it matter? So I want Tim to answer second, but Brad, you first. You and I selected a grass many years ago at Hoyana that had never been used in Asia before, and it wasn't typically known as a lynx turf, but has now proved itself over many years as a fantastic surface at Hoyana. So do you talk to designers? Designers talk to you. Is that a relationship that's important? And for the owners in the room and the people that are developing, is that something that they should know?
Yeah, we did. Back then, these grasses were new. The developers didn't know much about them. The architects didn't know much about them. They got John and his team involved, who heavily scrutinised the farm we had. They had us set up certain areas of the turf farm to play how the architects wanted it to play, and yeah, they put us through, had us jumping through all kinds of hoops to prove to them that this was the right grass. And now we're not really competing with those decisions anymore. Now we sit with developers and architects, and then we talk about which kind of zoysia would we use on that project.
Thanks, Brad. So, Tim, I guess the question is, when you come to a site, at what stage do you start thinking, does the turf make some impact on what you're trying to design?
Absolutely. And again, thank you for inviting me for this amazing conference and discussion on Vietnam. I would say that we're very blessed in what we do, because we're often putting the first line on the paper for the whole development. There are owners who have a vision, but it's our job most of the time to start the first movement of the pen, the first idea. And in my mind, when you're working through the vision, you've got the end product in your mind. So back to your question, are you thinking about turf grasses? Absolutely, because the selection of the turf grass is going to affect how we're going to design the golf course as well. You know, if we can go nice and, especially in warm season grasses that we're in here, in the past it's always been difficult to get short grass in the approaches to greens and using the putter from off the green. With the new technology and the new grasses, Brad, you know, we're seeing putters from off the green, and the game is changing, which is fantastic. And that affects how we can design the golf course. And that's really opened up a tool for us as the golf course architects. With the advancement of the turf grass, we've got more opportunity to create short grass around the green. A lot of the time we're going a monoculture across the golf. I'm not an agronomist, but I know a fair bit about it. A lot of the time we're going a monoculture of grass across the golf course, which helps a lot as well with mowing patterns. The way that the course is set up, again, in the design process, we're thinking about where that approach cut might be, how the tee might be cut, how the bunkers are going to perform. You know, are we going to draw the fairway lines coming into the bunker, so we want the ball to run into the bunker, or are we going to have semi-rough around the bunker? So always having the end view in your mind, even as you're putting the first line on the paper. And hopefully, you know, working deeply through the vision, through the concept, having guys like the agronomists, having the turf guys there, having the sustainability experts in the room when you're making those first lines is really, really important.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Mark, I'm going to challenge you for a few things here. You've been involved in many aspects of the development of golf, from site selection, design, even into operations, marketing, and everything. And let's wrap that and call it master planning. So we have some challenges in Vietnam. We know that many in the room will know that currently the membership model is probably dormant for now. Therefore, if you talk any kind of feasibility or ROI to ownership, you have real estate, obviously, first and foremost, is generally the lean back, casinos or gaming, of course, leisure, like here. So talk to us about the challenges that you have when you find the sites, but then you're restricted by corridors of real estate or on the connectivity to the rest of the master plan.
Well, first, I'd like to congratulate 54, Jed, Dandeli, Ben, for organizing this forum together with the Ministry of Culture, Sport, and Tourism. A forum like this is greatly needed for the golf industry to get together, all the stakeholders. I've been able to reflect on my personal journey, listening to the journey of Vietnam golf. First, I'd like to thank Gavin, our host at Laguna Lanco. I'm a little bit biased, but as this is the first Cernic Faudo signature course in Asia, and also the venue for the Faudo Series Asia Grand Final, but I do think this is the best resort with golf in all of Vietnam. But as I was saying, thinking of the journey of golf in Vietnam, and I've heard Mr. Vu talk earlier about the 10-year journey of the Vietnam Golf Association. Mr. Hong was on stage earlier from Tom Dow, which I know has 20 years of history. And then I started thinking, my first visit to Vietnam in the golf industry was 1997. So doing quick math, that was 28 years ago. And at the time, the group I was working for was involved in 2 projects. We were doing the redesign and the management of Dalat Palace, which was an existing golf course, but had fallen into disrepair. And we were also involved with the design and management of Ocean Dunes in Phan Thiet, which was the first ever Faudo design in Vietnam, and unfortunately has been redeveloped over the past few years, but was a great golf course. But it's amazing to think at that time, there were only 3 golf courses, I think, in Vietnam. And we used to joke among ourselves that we had 67% market share at the time. And all of our courses were ranked in the top 3 in Vietnam. So we had that going for us. But it's amazing now that we have 100 golf courses existing and another 100 coming. But you're absolutely right. I think some of the frustrations that we have, and I'm sure that Paul has the same frustrations, and Tim, is that normally when they bring the golf course designer in to look at a property, many times the master plan is already set. And you know, as Gavin talked about site selection, I mean, site selection is so important. And many times the prime land for golf is actually the land that's going to be where they're going to put the prime commercial development. So I think the mentality of not only in Vietnam, but many developers around Asia is the prime land, the waterfront land, the beachfront land, that must be the residential, that must be the hotel. And we understand the ROI comes from the residential, comes from the other commercial development. We are usually lucky if we might get one little green site or maybe one par 3 hole by the water, but generally the golf is sort of put in the back as an afterthought. I think if you look at, I mentioned earlier that I thought Laguna de Lanco was the best resort with golf, and the reason I say that is I don't think there are any existing purely golf resorts, golf-first resorts in Vietnam. Ho Tram might be close in terms of where you chose that land, but most of the developments are resorts or residential that have golf as an amenity. If you look at some examples from the U.S. Where the best land was used for golf, now there's a really old example, the Monterey Peninsula. This is a 100-year example where they developed Pebble Beach, they developed Monterey Peninsula Country Club, Cypress Point, on the prime land, all along the coast. And now, 100 years later, the real estate in that area is probably some of the most expensive in the world. A more recent example would be Bandon Dunes. Again, Mike Kaiser, a visionary, found this land on the coast of Oregon, has developed now in the past 25 years, has developed 5 18 holes, together with 2 par 3 courses, and all the golf is sitting on the prime land. The accommodation, the development, which has gone crazy over the past 10 years, is sitting back. And the crazy thing about Bandon Dunes, currently, if you want to be lucky enough to spend thousands of dollars to go there, you have to enter a lottery system. I've been to Bandon Dunes many times, but I do enter the lottery just to see if we can get accommodation. I got an email last week saying, you know, we are doing the draw, I think it's happening next week, for the time period from, I think it was from March to September 2027. So I'm hoping to be lucky enough to spend thousands of dollars. 2026 is done. So I know there are government issues in terms of putting golf in certain areas. There are setbacks that are required in golf development in Vietnam. I think there's a coastal road that goes along the coast, but as Gavin said, we have thousands of kilometers of beautiful coastline. A lot of it was sand, and I think selfishly as golf course designers, and I think people in the golf industry, we should be trying to lobby the government, educate developers that putting golf in the best land, the most attractive land, will have benefits down the line.
Great. Thank you, Mark. I'm going to come back down to Paul for a minute, and I think I had a few questions here, but I just kind of want to shake it up because we're at the end of the summit, so I think you guys should get some tricky questions. And again, anyone on the floor wants to ask, they really want tricky questions sent to them, so if anyone's got something that might stump them, please put your hand up. All right, let's start with this. Golf owners are in the room. They're selecting designers. The golf design world is confusing. There's golfers that design golf courses that are famous for playing There's some that are lesser known or not known at all and have produced just as good, if not better, golf courses. So where does brand come into it, Paul? Obviously, you're perfect to ask because you've arguably got the best brand in golf with Jack Nicklaus. Been around the longest, won the most majors, the greatest player of all time. He's designed golf courses all around the world. So owners in the room, what's the benefit of going to the name, or should there be something else in there to think about?
That is a tricky question. Thank you. We might as well get it started, right?
Yeah, please, let's do it.
I think, Ben, the answer to that question is all of the above. I think brand plays a role in certainly who we work with in terms of the developer. When you look at developers, they're developing a golf course for one of three reasons. They're either doing a residential golf course where they want to sell lots or homes. They're doing a golf course that could be a standalone golf course, and they just want it to be commercial so that they can make money on a golf course. If it's in the right location, it's designed well. And then thirdly is something that would be a combination of maybe a resort, some villas, and it could be a semi-private golf course. So when we work with the owners, we're trying to assess their vision for the property and understand what they want. And, we know that owners have certain budgets, or at least they think they do, and so we try to work within that budget. If it's something where we don't think that they're going to be able to produce the type of golf course that we think they should, and we've talked about sustainability, I look at sustainability a little differently. I look at it as being economically viable. And how do you make money or at least break even every year, even in the downturn? So one of the things from my operation background was coming up with the budgets that are necessary or required to make it successful. For example, just simple math. If your expenses are $5 million, you better be taking in more revenue than $5 million. But if you're doing a golf course that isn't well conditioned or well designed or well operated or unique, and you're just not going to make it. So we like to talk to owners about that. We like to talk about feasibility, what makes the golf course unique or different. The old adage, build it and they will come unless it's abandoned dunes, like Mark mentioned. There's not many of those, right? So how do you make yours unique? I think Mark and Madame Na with BRG Group, every one of their properties are uniquely different. We did a golf course for an owner in Cabo San Lucas, and I don't know if any of you have played there or been there, but it's called Quivera. And one of the things that was very unique, other than being an ocean course, is at the halfway houses, they had, because it's Mexico, they had a tequila and taquito bar. And that was very unique, and it was inside-outside dining, and people loved it. And, it was one of those experiences that they paid $500 US, and they loved it. So, I guess different horses for different courses, but it all comes down to the vision, what the budget is. We like to think that the brand and the level of design is both equally important.
Thanks, Paul. I'm going to push the point a little bit with Gavin about building a golf course is getting, especially in Vietnam, really expensive, to the point where it's turning some owners away from doing it. So we need to be mindful of that, where a golf course once upon a time could be built sub $10 million is now 20, 30 or more. So you're building them. Why are they so expensive?
Yeah, again, I'd counter that with, we built one last year for sub 10 million. That's fantastic. An hour up the road with the Norman Group. So it doesn't have to be expensive. But I'd kind of like to pivot a little bit on the what we're sitting in right now with this current weather event, and those becoming more frequent and larger. I think infrastructure within construction and within everything we do is changing a little bit. So again, from a sustainability point of view, that can mean a lot of things, but if you've got a product that fails within the first big weather event, that's not overly sustainable. If you don't do it right the first time, and you have to come in and retouch stuff up during operations, that gets really expensive. And what you think an upfront cost might be, triple that, quadruple that if you're having to get into an operation and repair stuff. So that foundation fundamentals of what John spoke about, the 95% of the process being underground, if that's not put together right, forget about having the best grass in the world. It will fail.
Yeah, and maybe we'll touch on that because we're almost going down the development stages here. So, Brad, how important is it to be working with Gavin when you're building golf courses and knowing what's under the ground, what's some of the risks when it comes to grass? Because all golf courses open great, they look fantastic and green, and it's the 5 years down the road where something happened in the green makeup or what have you, or the irrigation or drainage. So, Gav, maybe touch a little bit on that, and then Brad, I'd ask you to follow up with how closely you guys work, not particularly just you guys, but how the construction and grass need to work together well.
Sure. I mean, there's a step in front of that, which is, the design intent and, the clever minds in the room that, are the architects. So again, we kind of sit in the middle of that vision. But look, from my point of view, it's about water. Everything we do is about water. It's about finding it to put it on the golf course. It's about removing it. And if you remove it successfully, then you're creating the right environment for the turf grass. So you're drawing through oxygen, you're drawing through gas exchanges, you're doing, the science bit of the art that we do. If you get that right, you've got your fundamentals right, then grass selection is a very important part of that, which parlays into what Tim said about, the surface you want to create. Do you want firm? Do you want fast? Do you want to have different options of how you play the golf course around the green? If you haven't got the underground bit right, then it's a real challenge operationally to maintain those standards or even set any benchmarks in standards, because there will be so many variables with each weather event. You'll have spikes and troughs. And whereas if you get the fundamentals right and you put the right grass on top, you can actually then create a really great surface year round. And again, it doesn't have to be expensive. It just has to be done right.
Brad?
I mean, fortunately for us, in some cases, but unfortunate for some developers, they've made those wrong decisions. And we've had to go in and resurface the greens, the fairways, the tees, because they built the course wrong. We've been on jobs and we try to avoid it now. We've learnt lessons where we've gone in to a project, we've been appointed the grassing contractor, supply, plant, growing the golf course, to quickly realise the golf course isn't being built properly, the sand depth isn't enough, the sand quality is poor, there's not enough subsoil drainage, and that makes us look bad.
Is that cutting corners during the process, or just ignorance and the understanding of what's required to build a golf course?
Yeah, in that case, it was a contractor providing a lump sum price. I'm going to build your golf course for $20 million, and they're probably trying to do it for 10. And it made us look bad. They certainly looked bad. They blamed the grass. They went back in, ripped it all out, and put in better sand and more drainage. And then eventually it worked out, but at the expense of the owner.
Thanks, Brad. I'm going to stay with you for a second. It was referenced earlier about buying a Rolls Royce, and I use it often when talking with owners and developers that, the expense of this golf course is sometimes we mention 20, 30, 40 million dollars. It's like buying a Rolls Royce and never looking after it, or not taking it to the Rolls Royce dealership to service it. So talk to us a little bit about some of your experiences and any advice you can give new golf course developers and stakeholders in the room about the importance of that. As a lot of you will know, Brad also consults with his team and comes in to fix golf courses. So talk to us a little bit about, is that something that you come across or talk with the ownership as well, or general managers?
Yeah, we do. I mean, there's some turf varieties out there that just simply can't be maintained well enough. Some turf varieties build thatch faster than you can remove it, which is another problem. It's a headache for members, guests. the golf course owner. They have to continuously fork out money. Eventually, the time comes when they don't want to deal with it anymore. Therefore, they make the decision to close the golf course and change it. I've seen it all. I've helped out the European and Asian tour for a lot of their tournament preparations, and I think it's been disastrous as well for some golf course owners who have been embarrassed by poor, what would you call it, poor maintenance, poor servicing, as you would a car. These things get left, they get ignored. The owner doesn't want to spend the money on the renovation equipment to upkeep the golf course, and ultimately, for me personally, I've been involved in so many golf course constructions and seeing the failures from a tournament perspective or just in general play. I've always thought if I was going to spend my own money and build my own golf course, what kind of grass would I use? And of course, I'm going to use the one that's the easiest to maintain, the one that's cost as little to maintain, and the one that's going to produce the best playing surfaces year-round with as little as inputs as possible.
Thanks, Brad. I'm going to come to Tim. I asked you to join this summit and this panel for a few reasons, but one of the most that jumped out to my mind was how much experience you've had around the world in all sorts of different places, climates, cultures, 50 plus projects. So give us a little insight into what drives you when it comes to designing golf. Give us a little bit of insight into what's working well around the world, and to the group here that's thirsty for knowledge and what we can do better, or what any sort of banana peels that we can avoid slipping on in the future when we're talking about these next 100. I think that was 3 questions. You can select one or go for all 3.
Thank you very much for that question. It's a fantastic question. I grew up in Melbourne, Australia, playing some of the most natural golf courses on the planet and some of the best golf courses on the planet on the sandbelt. So my golfing introduction was pretty fantastic, and but I've been living in Europe for the last 25 years. So what we've been finding working in different political situations, different geographical locations, weather. Brad said there's a warm season grass and a cool season grass, and it has a big effect on the design process. But then we get into the micro detail of the grasses as well. But I think always at the back of our mind is trying to create a sense of place for each project, and trying to understand what is the DNA of that project, of that location, but also of that client. In the end, we want our client to be successful. We're not just portraying our own ego into the design. We have to think of our clients. We have to understand what their target market is trying to be, and make sure that that design is specific for that future target market. Where actually these projects that we're going to start is not for next year, it's thinking about 5 years down the track, 10 years down the track. So who's going to be playing their golf courses in 10 years' time? One sector, one segment that's probably been left a little bit behind in the design world is women and shorter hitters, which can be kids and elderly people, because this is also a very big market not to forget about. We think about the average golfer, but quite often we're forgetting about the women golfers and also shorter hitters who are the
next. Do you design to that, Tim?
Absolutely.
Is that something new? I mean, I welcome anyone else to comment on this, but is it just designing a golf course for a male golfer off 18 handicap, or are you thinking golf events? Are you thinking women junior golf? Has that changed?
We can talk a little bit about the design of tees, and I could probably talk about an hour on the design of tees, but the teeing ground and the teeing strategy is absolutely crucial to the enjoyment of the game. for that particular golfer. So thinking about the strategy from each tee is really important to understand who is going to use it. Obviously, if you're creating a tournament venue, the back tee is for the elite 0.001% of the golfers. As we move to the next tee, which might be 70% of your revenue at the moment, we think about how to give enough area. You know, there's a huge amount of rounds being played in this region, tourist golf. They're expecting very fine turf conditions, so we need to make sure they're big enough, they're on the right line of play, they're the correct distance to take on challenges, because I think golfers enjoy the challenge. We're trying to create a strategic design so golfers can play away from bunkers or away from water, but always have the opportunity to play the hole. So that's really important. But then the forward tees, you know, the world is made up of 50% of women. It's a segment that we're not capturing enough of. And maybe it's a cultural thing as well, particularly in Europe. Probably over here, there's more women playing golf. But we can design the golf course to be more inclusive as well for women golfers and for kids, for the elderly. We want to capture them at the start and get another 5 years of their golfing life at the end. So we can do it with clever design.
Thanks, Tim. I want to finish on a question here. I'm going to ask Mark, and then I'm going to welcome anyone else to make a comment after Mark about this. I think it's a poignant place to finish the discussion for today. Back this morning, we talked about the vision. And the vision of this summit was to get everyone in a room and talk about, should we be working together? Is there benefit in creating a destination, golf in Vietnam? Or should we all be just working our own way and doing our own thing? So you've been a leading voice in this sort of area, Mark, over the years. In terms of destination, I think there's some great work already done in Vietnam on that. But try and cap this summit off for us, Mark, and talk to us about, should there be an owners group? Should the owners talk together? Is it a monthly? Is it a yearly? Is there something that's beneficial? We had Renata here earlier, who we know her role in Europe. Is there something like that here in Vietnam that will benefit not only owners, but the golfers and tourism?
Yeah, well, in my mind, there's 4 key characteristics for a true golf destination. One would be golf courses, of course, quantity and quality. And I think you need to have it, you know, at least 5 to 10 golf courses in close proximity. And that's where cooperation would come in. It's not just 1 or 2 golf courses. You need to have hotel accommodation, either on site or, again, in close proximity. I know Mark Reeves mentioned earlier about international flights. You know, having less friction for golfers. I mean, golfers are traveling with golf bags. They're usually traveling with lots of clothes. They don't want to make connections and show up without their golf clubs, which is always a very stressful occurrence for a golfer. Planning 3 or 4 days with his buddies or his family and not having your golf clubs. And I think the other part of it, which is you know, very appropriate for Vietnam, is having other non-golf activities. And as we know, Vietnam has lots of those, whether it's historical sites or beaches. And thinking of examples of that, I think one of the best examples is right here where we are. And I think it's easy to come visit Laguna Langko or Bana Hills, as Rick did yesterday, or Hoi An, and forget about how this has become, you know, one of the great golf destinations, I think, in all of Asia. And again, a little from personal experience, I was involved with the design and the management of the first golf course that was built in the Da Nang, Hoi An, Hue market, which was Montgomery Links. And I remember from you know, when we opened that golf course, having some very tough discussions with our client, who was Indochina Capital, when after the first year of operation, we were struggling to get 9,000 rounds, which was, they were not a happy client, let's put it that way. And you know, Ben, you've played a big part in this, but soon thereafter, Da Nang Golf Club opened, I think 2010, and then expanded to 36 holes, Nicholas design. 2012, Laguna Lanco opened. 2016, Bonner Hills. And, you know, in a short period of time, from struggling to get 9,000 rounds, the figures I have from 2019, I think this market with 5 courses at the time was around 220,000 rounds in 10 short years. Then COVID hit, which decimated everything. But in the intervening years, you had Hoi An Shores open. Ben, you got one of your babies, one of your many babies in Vietnam. And we had the Vin Pearl Nam Hoi An Golf Course open. So so as we sit here in 2025, we have 7 golf courses. The figure, and I might be underestimating based on what Mark was saying about the number of rounds you've done, but the figure that I heard in 2024 was that this market was generating 380,000 rounds. So I'm sure 2025 we're going to be over 400,000 rounds, which I think if you look back in 16 short years, this market has gone struggling from 9,000 rounds. And the reasons being, we've had the golf courses. Back in 2009, I think there were only 3 direct international flights into Da Nang. I was traveling here from Singapore a lot, and it wasn't a daily flight, and it wasn't a direct flight. Depending on the day, you had to stop in Siem Reap, either on the way there or on the way back. I think there was 1 flight from Hong Kong. There were some flights from Korea. Just doing some very quick, inaccurate research, looking at the arrivals yesterday in Da Nang. I think there are at least 15 destinations where you can now fly directly.
Mark, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
I think what you're saying, working together is a good idea.
Yeah.
We started the Gulf Coast Vietnam many years ago. I know Singh sitting down there, and she has championed that for many years. Working together is great, but that's 7 golf courses. We're talking now about trying to promote Vietnam as a destination. So I want to do a quick fire and give you each a chance to everyone's looking at their watch ready to go to the gala dinner and drink some beer. So let's do a quick fire across. We're here, there's owners in the room. Should they be working together? Should golf course owners be sitting down and creating an opportunity to work together? And what would they work together on? Paul.
The answer to that is yes. Golf operators, yes, they should be working together. They should be advising owners. There should be more of that. Probably the most frustrating thing as a golf course designer is you build a beautiful golf course, you develop something very special, you come back 2 years and the conditions have dropped unbelievably. So I think the answer to that question is they need to get together more. They need to share in what their struggles are. And I think Jed made a comment about, you know, the government and lobbying the government and getting them involved. That will help speed up the permitting process, because here the permitting process is lengthy, and that's tough for an owner. That's tough for everyone involved, designers, everyone.
Thanks, Paul. Mark, same question.
Of course, yes, is the answer. And I think it would be good for the audience maybe talk about the Vietnam Golf Coast, because I think you were one of the pioneers in creating that little association here for the golf courses that you had here. But I think there's value for all the golf course owners to get together to
Yeah, I think it's great. Look, but the boat isn't big enough. We can't go fast enough with just general managers and directors of golf working on a destination. We're now talking about getting owners making proper movement for Vietnam.
Yeah, and I think it's very apropos for what Jeremy said about talking to people outside the golf bubble. And if the owners can get together, and the gentleman spoke earlier about his issues with land price and approvals, and I think all of that stuff is going to be necessary. And the larger the group that can band together, the more effective the voice is going to be.
Great. Tim,
I
what's your
think
thoughts?
with regional planning, it's important to think about clusters of golf facilities. If golf tourism is the main target, a golf tourist, whether they come from Korea or other countries, are going to want variety. It's like when you go on holiday, you don't want to eat at the Italian restaurant every night. You want to play different golf courses. So I think variety and thinking about the clusters of the developments.
So you're saying owners can sit in a room and start strategizing or a roadmap to make sure that there's
I
not...
think that would be great. I mean, if the planning department is doing that as well, that's fantastic. And then obviously the selection of golf course architects to get a nice variety as well, I think
Right.
is a good way to go.
Tim's looking for his first design in Vietnam, by the way, if you didn't pick up on that hint. Gavin, same question. Should the owners be working together? You've worked with a bunch of owners here and perhaps the most prominent owner for many years.
Yeah, look, it's interesting. I'm sure every person in this room would agree that, you know, owners working together is a great thing, but how you make that happen from their individual silos, I think there might be a hook here. Like, just listening though, is that, you know, a collaborative voice from the ownership to government for their benefit is a great pitch. And then if you've got them in the room for that, you can catch them for some of the other stuff. So, yeah, I think it's inevitable that if people are working together, you know, everybody rises.
Brad, can it be done?
It can be done. It should be done. We had a situation on the Gold Coast where there was ourselves. I was at the Glades, the owner's rep and superintendent, and managing shopping malls and all kinds of crazy things. We got into a price war with Hope Island, Sanctuary Cove, Lakelands, and there was one other, the Pines there. And we started beating each other down on price, and we were five-star golf courses all competing, dropping our prices down to get more people through the door when we realised, hang on, we should be maintaining our prices to a certain level. We should be combining all our marketing money together and going out to Japan, around Asia, other parts of the world, putting our funds together so it wouldn't cost us all so much. And then we all agreed that we could maintain certain pricing structures so that we could all make money.
Great. Any questions from the floor? I think it's coming. She's running.
Hello. Okay. Rudy from Golfscape. We have 100 great courses in Vietnam. For the next 100, what can we think about in terms of being sustainable to coexist with the existing 100, but at the same time to be unique and stand out on their own? And I guess to the whole panel, whoever's interested.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I would have to say or caution people is building in areas where you're near population centers or resorts or people can get to. I think we heard a little bit about, you know, airlift, but in the U.S., people won't drive more than an hour to play golf. And when this starts developing more and more, people are going to have the same thing. They're not going to want to be out in the car for 2 hours to go play golf when they have a lot of other choices with their time and their money. The other thing I was going to say is that as you develop more golf and we get close to the next 100, people have discretionary dollars. And where are they going to go play? Where would you go play? You'd go play which has the best service, best condition, best design, by far. And so, same type of model in the US. We had 16,000 golf courses. We lost 1,000 before COVID. Post-COVID, we gained about 25% more players. Now there'll be a coming back from that, about 5 to 7%. But COVID did a lot of good for golf here in Vietnam too. But there will be a time where you reach a saturation point and the stronger ones will survive.
Good answer. Renata?
Thank you. Thank you, Tim, for addressing women's golf. I can talk about that for hours. You can talk about tees. I can talk about women's golf for hours. But I think it's a very valid point that you make, accessibility. And not only when you look at tees, but also maybe at short formats. And Mark, I think this might be a good one for you, the short formats. How do you see that here in the future and to make it more broadly accessible for golfers, families traveling here, and also for local communities in playing better? We see that, I think that is a challenge and an opportunity in Europe for sure to really add short formats and different kinds of entering golf to make it more accessible.
Yeah, I think if you look at the development of golf in Vietnam, it's mostly been what I would call higher end, and we don't really have municipal golf right now. One of the things that Sir Nick is really interested in are those short formats, and actually has just launched an initiative with a fellow called Paul Jansen, who is actually a lead designer here at Laguna Lanco, initiative called Golf in Small Spaces. And they've done a lot of projects in North America to date. They've done a couple in Australia and New Zealand. I've sort of been given the license to try and develop that in Southeast Asia. I've talked with a few people, including some in this room, about what could be done in Vietnam. But these could be anything from a half hectare to 10 hectares. It could be a putting course, a simple putting course like a mini putt, mini golf, to a serious practice facility, to 3 or 4 actual holes. It's mainly using artificial turf, so it's easy to maintain. It could be indoor, it could be outdoor, but I think that is the trend all over the world with things like Top Golf and Pop Stroke and those type of formats. I noticed the National Golf Foundation is now having a special category of off-course golfers and on-course golfers. So I think that is important as Vietnam develops to have these entry points for golf that is not just a 18-hole championship course.
Could I just make a comment, Ben? Interestingly enough, we just got a client in the Middle East specifically requesting a 12-hole golf course.
Great. John?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I fly 180 times a year. I spend 220 days traveling. And everybody asks me, oh, where's the next big destination for golf? And the entire world is talking about Vietnam, okay? And I think the room needs to know that everybody is talking about Vietnam. Don't screw this one up. You have one chance, not you, Ben. You're okay. You got Hoi An or Shores right. Anyway, but genuinely, we talk about cutting corners, or we talk about, Brad going back in and fixing places. If you think the people in the room are expensive, wait until you hire an amateur, because these professionals have all done it. The people that are in this room have developed literally thousands of golf courses. And if you go and you try and cut a corner, or take a couple of million off, or put less drainage in, or whatever it's going to be in that golf course, you will pay for it at the end of the day. So I just want to make that last point, is just do it properly if you're going to do it. Otherwise, just don't do it.
Great point. Any other questions from the floor? Any comments from you fine gentlemen would like to leave the room with? Great. Well, I really want to thank these guys. A lot of them have flown a long way around the world to come here. We really cherish your time and your experience. I urge everyone here, don't be shy. Come up to these guys, talk to them, jump on their LinkedIn, however you want to connect with them, or through us at 54. We'll gladly liaise and talk with you about your business in particular or your golf course. So thank you, gentlemen. Yep.